Hi.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I just want to make sure that we've got our feed going, and because I am not seeing it. Are you guys seeing it all live?
I can see it and it's recording.
Weird. It's not showing. Huh. Yeah, I don't see it over here on this stream, but maybe it's just populating. We just lost Melanie.
She's back.
Okay. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Phoebe Chongchua, and this is the Brand Journalism Advantage chat. It's our second one. So thank you for joining us. So this is kind of a new space for me, at least. In fact, I think when Kate Finley and I first started this, and Kate's going to be telling us a little bit about herself. She's with Belle Communications, and Melanie Deziel is our guest in the hot seat, talking all about content creation and best practices. But when we first started this, I think I had been on Blab maybe, like 5 days. So it was quite fun to learn all about this and come together in this space, because since then I've been watching a lot of different things and finding out a lot more about it. And one of the things that I really like.
Hi there.
Hi, Melanie.
Can you guys
how are
hear
you?
me?
Yeah.
She can't hear us. Everybody else can. So let's see. Maybe she's got us muted.
Anyone having any luck hear me?
I wonder what's going on. So if any of you who have just tuned in,
I can't seem to hear anyone else.
Okay.
See what we can figure out.
Melanie.
Technology problem.
Yeah. Let me send her a message. And anyone else out there, if you're having trouble hearing us, if you could just, well, that's kind of silly, right?
They can all, they can hear us and see us. Actually, we have a message. So I'm thinking maybe the mute button's pressed or something with Melanie. She's giving us hands up.
Yeah. But she can, Melanie, okay. Log out and log in.
Yeah.
Oh, she can't see.
Or hear. Huh.
Okay,
all right, so she's going to come back so we can preview what we're talking about while we're having a reboot.
Yeah, so what I'd like everyone to think about is, if you are a content creator, whether you do this for a living, your brand agency, or you are a business and you're looking to get started in the process, here she comes, start thinking about what are your preferred methods. Melanie, hi.
Hi there.
Yay!
There you are.
We figured it out.
Yay. Okay.
All else fails, reboot.
All right, well, we were just talking about how... we started a chat a month ago, and we're doing this once a month. And this coincides with what we do over at the Brand Journalism Advantage and on that podcast. And Melanie is actually episode 178, I believe it is. And your episode goes live tomorrow. And we're talking all about how every company can be a media company in that episode. Now, we're not duplicating that here. We're going into a little bit of a different direction, which still pertains to that episode. So I highly recommend you check out episode 178, all about content creation, the best practices, and also the challenges. And co-hosting it with me is Kate Finley from Belle Communications. Why don't you give a intro for yourself, Kate, because you have also been a past guest.
Yeah, so we had our episode recently. Was that, I don't know, it was 168. I'll have to look it up and say it around there. Yeah. No, it was 166, actually. I remember.
Oh, there you go. Right.
It always sticks out when you have double numbers. But anyway, so we did one episode, 166, talking about how to treat your brand like a startup. And it looks like Melanie can't hear me. Man, I blame Blab.
Oh, come on. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, should I log in and log out? I mean, I feel we can do that real quick.
Should I try giving it a log out and back in?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, guys.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Sorry about that.
Okay. try again. I hope this
right.
is getting fun for you out there in the audience.
This is what happens live, right? I'll be right back.
Yeah, right. That's true. We should all be used to that because of being
Well,
in
actually,
media.
she was just hearing us just then.
Yeah, I know. It's just a little technical. But anyway, so yeah, my agency is Belle Communications, and we focus on public relations and digital marketing. So primarily PR, social, and then content. So that's going to be part of the discussion today. We work with brands who are doing great things and really need to amplify their voice. So that's kind of, ideally, that's who we love to work with, people who are making a difference in the world, whether that's through a product, a service, or a cause. But yeah, so for today's purposes and talking about content, it's going to be fun to hear Melanie's background, and she'll give us an intro into kind of who she is and what she does. And I can't wait to hear about the Overlap League. So I'm excited to pick her brain about that.
Right. So that's a great newsletter that she does. And I encourage you, if you haven't already, sign up for it. Also check out Kate's and mine at thinklikeajournalist.com. Now, what I will tell you is that what's really fascinating when you go to Melanie's show notes page, which will be live tomorrow, you'll see some, there she is. You'll see some really good examples of what the New York Times is doing. And of course, that's a very, very large brand, but she used to work for them. And so, hey, Melanie, you're back with us.
I tried a different browser. We're all set.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm curious, which browser are you using? Just let us know.
Yeah, Chrome wasn't working, but Firefox has come to the rescue.
Okay,
All right.
That's where Firefox coming to the rescue.
All right,
Who
well,
knew?
let's get right into it. So again, I'm Phoebe Chongchua. I'm with the Brand Journalism Advantage. Thank you for tuning in. If you have been following me, I've been podcasting for about a year now. Recently was named top 50 podcaster to follow for public relations, marketing, and social media. I've done about 100 and close to 180 episodes now. Melanie's episode goes live tomorrow. She's episode 178, and we're talking about what I like to call EC equals MC. Every company can be a media company. My background's in journalism, and Melanie's as well. And then Kate Finley joined me for episode 166. We talked about how to think like a startup and explore all of that to run your business, and whether you're big or small, to continue that. And Kate's with Belle Communications. Today, we're talking about content creation best practices. Now, from my perspective, everything always goes better when you have technology working on your side, right, ladies?
Yes.
But also when you have questions coming in. So hearing from you really makes a difference, and it gets us excited too. So there's a chat bar probably on your right-hand side. You can, join in there. You can ask us a question. If we're not covering something that you think is relevant to the conversation, please, let us know. And hey, kudos to the, I guess
a lot of props coming in.
I love it. Love it, Ross. But so let's dive right in. And Melanie, first give us a little background on what you've been up to in, this space of content creation.
Yeah, and I heard a little bit of background while I was trying to get everything to connect. But yeah, I started out studying journalism. And as soon as I graduated, I ended up coming into the native content space. And lucky for me, I got to ride that wave as it grew and grew. And I've had the liberty of working with some of the most talented content creators across multiple brands. I heard you mention I started out at HuffPost, HuffPost Partners Studio, was there when we started that team. I went over to the Times and we started T-Brand Studio and got to be a part of, that really incredible group of creators right from the start. And now I'm at Time Inc., where I'm the director of creative strategy. So I work on content marketing that crosses more than one of our brands. So we've got more than 30 media brands based in the US, everything from Sports Illustrated, People, Entertainment Weekly, to obviously Time, Fortune, Money, Food and Wine. So quite a suite. And it's a great opportunity for myself and my team to think about how content works on different platforms, in different environments, and in different topic areas. So it's a very exciting place to be.
So, what I find interesting is you have a journalistic background. I want to cover one thing right off the bat. We talk a little bit in tomorrow's episode, but this whole idea of what is brand journalism? Is it really journalism? And, I've got 20 years of journalism at the heart and soul of me. But some people would say, that's not journalism, that's advertising. What do you say to that?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think that a lot of the work that's being done is journalism, and a lot of it is advertising. I think the same can be said for actual journalism, straight up journalism, that there's always a spread between how much value you're providing versus how much you're just speaking for yourself or for your own voice or to promote a cause that you're aligned with, especially in an opinion piece. So I think there's a spread everywhere. Undoubtedly, there's some, content marketing, some native that's incredibly, incredibly branded and really just pushing a product. But there's also some, like the two we referenced, that the New York Times did, that have both won awards. One for Cole Haan, which was a deep profile on some ballerinas of the New York City Ballet, and one for Netflix, which was about women inmates and, real women who had been to prison or were currently in prison. And in both those cases, they were the same kind of sources, the same kind of reporting, the same rigorous editing and fact checking that other journalism would be subjected to. So I think in many cases, I think it does qualify as journalism.
Absolutely. I think that when you look at those pieces, and if you haven't had a chance, don't worry, I've got it in Melanie's show notes, which again is over at thinklikeajournalist.com. But when you look at them, even the way they're laid out on the website, it kind of flows through. Like you had a video piece, you had photos, then you had, a lot of really interesting content. It really looked and felt a lot like, well, any content in the New York Times. So this isn't about fooling people. Of course, at the bottom, it says paid post, and the New York Times editorial staff had nothing to do with this, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can all recite that by heart at this point, all of us who are on that team. Yeah, I think it depends on the environment, right? So for the New York Times, what's native to the New York Times, what readers expect is really engaging, in-depth, trustworthy content that, applies to your life in some way, that you can relate to, that is actionable for you. So I think that's what was native, and that's what we had to create. And we had to present it using the same storytelling tools, multimedia. We had video, audio, infographics, illustrations, parallax scroll. That's what our readers are used to and what they expected. So we tried to go ahead and bring that in. I think if you're on a different site, what's native is different there. So BuzzFeed, something like that wouldn't necessarily be native to BuzzFeed. You'd be looking at more of a list type environment. So yeah, there's different ways to activate native on different environments.
Sure. So when you look at this and you see the different brands that are trying to create content, I mean, we said we're talking about best practices. So what would you say? I can tell you one that comes up all the time in the Brand Journalism Advantage, and that's, as a journalist, transparency. Like we said, we were just talking about with the campaigns. But what are some other best practices that you say are vital to content creation?
Yeah, I think, and this is something we can talk about more in depth, one of the common challenges is making sure that the story is getting the format. I think so often in advertising, you think sometimes about the format first, right? We know we want banner ads, so let's design around that. Or we know we need a 30-second spot, so let's come up with a story to fill it. In content marketing, I think it's really the opposite. You have to think about the story you want to tell and then determine the best format to bring that to life.
Yeah. And so when you look at creating that content, and getting it out, because Kate, of course, you work a lot in that space of helping to get the content seen, the amplification. What are some tips from either of you that can really help you to amplify that content? Once you've decided this is the audience, this is the story that's going to resonate, how do we get seen and heard and things like obviously collaboration like this works well, but what else can be done?
I will say, if you guys could press the mute button on my picture and each other's pictures, the sound, except your own, then we shouldn't have echoing, I hope. Okay. And we might anyway. And I'll push through it. Is it echoing for you guys?
No, I don't.
Okay. Then I'll turn myself down.
There you go.
One of the things I think would be interesting to talk about, even before that, I'm really interested, Melanie, in how obviously the powerhouse that is Time or BuzzFeed. These are some great examples to look to and think about how can we pare these down for our brands that we work with and for ourselves as individuals. So do you have any tips for that? Like, how have you worked with smaller brands, or maybe like just talk to friends about, you know, how you can pare it down when you're not necessarily at the level where you could use time, how to really make that content relevant and look professional when it's in that format, whether it's a trade publication and you want to do some native advertising there, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I talk about a lot, and this applies regardless of your environment, whether you're working with a big publisher like the New York Times or BuzzFeed or Wired or some other, or whether you're just looking to create content for your social channels, for your own blog, for your local paper. I kind of have this 4-step process to figuring out what story you should tell where. So the first step is obviously to identify your power. So what is the thing that you have the authority to speak about? What's within your area of expertise to talk about? It's probably broader than just your products and services, and has sort of these concentric circles of things you can talk about that are a little further removed, but still in your wheelhouse. The next one is going to be to find your people. So who are the people who are interested in whatever this thing is that you're talking about? You know, it might be that you're creating content specifically for moms, or specifically for millennials, or specifically for people who have a plumbing issue in your local area to use your plumbing services. Once you know what you're going to talk about and who you're going to say it to, figure out how those people consume content and where they are. Because if you're looking for something to create content for moms, maybe it's on your blog, but you're going to want to make sure you promote something like that on channels, social channels, and other places where moms would be. So maybe that's on Pinterest, for example. And then, or, you know, if you're going for the plumbing route, the local plumber, maybe it's just putting up tutorials on YouTube, because you know that people are going to Google, how do I fix my toilet from making that buzzing noise, or, you know, from running. So that's finding your people. And then the last one is the format. So again, if you're going to go the route of putting something on Pinterest for the moms, you want to make sure it's super visual, because you know that it's a visually driven format. So, you know, that's going to be key to getting it to succeed there. You know, even if you have the right topic, you know, you have, you know, who your audience is, you know, where those people are, you've got to present it in the right way so that it fits into the environment. And I think that process sort of works, whether it's your own blog on your website, or, you know, you're promoting on social, or partnering with a big publisher.
It's so cool to hear that. And really, that's something that ties really well into PR. When you really want impactful coverage, and as a journalist, everybody's going to be like, praise the Lord, you're exactly right. Because you need to target before you reach out. And that's exactly what you're saying. Before you go ahead and create that content, or you do that outreach, you write the blog post, think about who the target audience is and what do they want to see on your blog? What do they want to see in an ad? What do they not like? And how can you not do that? So that's really, I think, when you're looking at your content and creating it, you have to think about, when the eyeballs see this, what do I want them to do? What's the action? And is that clear in the message that we're conveying, it visually and in the content?
The other thing that happens a lot, and I'm sure you find this in PR too, is people kind of don't know what their goal is up front. And it's hard with content because it could be a lot of different things. But, you know, I have people who will say, oh, we're really trying to drive traffic to our website, right? But then you look at the content they're creating, and nowhere in there is there a link to the website. You know, it sort of gets lost in the process. Or, you know, we're really going to measure this campaign based on video views, or on, for example, video starts. Like, we want to see how many people start our video, and yet it's on autoplay. So obviously that will be 100. You know, so making sure that you know your purpose. Like, why are you actually putting this campaign together, and making sure you kind of remind yourself of that throughout the process to make sure that you're lining up your goals.
Well, you know, Ross, I see what you're putting at, rigging the metrics. One of the things that I want to talk about is the vanity metrics, you know, like getting a lot of retweets or versus getting Facebook likes. What's important when you're trying to measure? And I know this changes with what the action that you're trying to create, but give us an idea of what you think is important, Melanie, when it comes to the metrics to measure.
Yeah, so I think for a lot of people, content is really more top of funnel. I think a lot of marketers are used to thinking in a direct response way. So how many purchases is this going to drive? How many in-store activation, things like that, or new signups. Not all content is really built for that, and especially the higher level stuff, it's telling more of a lifestyle story. You often find people thinking sort of about the wrong metrics, like you're saying. So I think it really depends. I encourage people to think about content as part of a larger conversation that's driving toward overall brand perception. I think those kinds of things are much better to measure when you're telling more of a lifestyle story. So brand perception, maybe purchase intent or sentiment about the brand. Do they now believe that you truly care about communities, or that you actually want to help? So those kinds of things I think are typically better for measuring top of funnel. And when you're looking at something a little lower funnel that is, closer to a direct response, then that's probably when you want to start measuring things like click-through to the website, or, video completions, or how do they go and share this content after they've consumed it. So it can kind of...
Yeah, and I see there's a lot of comments coming in, so we really appreciate you guys sharing your information. It just makes the conversation so much more stimulating. But Minesh says that he's literally found shifting from engagement to clicks to leads and finally to sales causes complete shifts in a business. And Ross says that longer term customer acquisition versus immediate sale. One of the things I found interesting in this whole process is how you hook somebody in and how you keep them hooked in throughout that long-term process of engagement. Because whether it's newsletters, like let's talk a little bit about what you're doing, Melanie, with the Overlap League. And I know you're building that up. How do you get people in, get them interested, and get them to continue on? What's your funnel, if you will, your process of building that tribe look like?
Yeah, so I think in full transparency, the Overlap League is fairly young, so I'm still learning along with it, like I think a lot of content marketers are. Yeah. So the basic thing for the Overlap League is that my consumers, I guess, my peers in the native space were often coming to me with very specific questions. Have you heard about the latest about such and such? Are they creating a studio at that publisher? Or do you know of any jobs that are open, in content strategy? And I was serving a very one-to-one relationship for a lot of those people, sometimes fielding, 10, 15 requests a day, just connecting people or sharing a job opening or referring someone for a job. And I thought that I could really better serve the community by connecting some of these people to each other versus having them rely on me to be that connection point, and also be able to push content to them versus waiting for people to come, that I could just provide more value. So I think there's kind of a relationship there between how advertisers are. Someone's going to come to you to ask very specific questions about your product, but how can you provide more value in the interim so that when they have a specific question, they're going to trust you and come to you? And that was sort of my goal. So just putting together the newsletter, I send out, news about the industry. I send out recent examples that are standout and why I think that, they're worth noting or emulating. Events that are coming up in the space to help other people connect with each other. And then obviously a lot of jobs, and most of them are word of mouth, people who are on the newsletter emailing me to say, can you feature this? I'd love to get someone from inside the community to come fill this role. So that for me, the funnel is really just trying to provide as much value as possible in hopes that if someone has a specific question or a specific need that I might be able to help with, that they know that I'm someone that they can come to for more specific requests.
So what have you found to be, and I know that the Overlap League is young, but what have you found to be successful in your whole content marketing journey and brand journalism journey? Do you find it's ebooks? What are the sources? Like, now here we are on Blab, and we've got a lot of folks joining in, and we appreciate that. But what really is the mechanism that you would say is coming to the forefront? Is there one, or do you think it's a multitude of platforms that you just have to kind of test it with the communities?
I think it's been really interesting to watch. I think native didn't evolve for a long time because it was limited to print, and what was native there was like the advertorials of days of yore, where we were just sort of making it look like an article with a box around it.
Yes.
I think the amazing opportunity is that what's native to the web changes every day. I mean, if we did this 3 months ago, we would have just had a Twitter chat, and if we had done it 6 months ago, it probably would have been a Q&A on your blog, or 6 years ago, a Q&A on your blog without any social interaction. So as the tools, become more popular and as new technology comes into play, I think what will be native is going to change at the same pace, which is kind of terrifying, but also really exciting.
Yeah.
You saying that was even making me think about Google Hangouts and how there's been an evolution there with, everyone's getting their Google Plus profile all set. And now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't even don't use it day to day.
Here's an example. So does anyone remember Google Helpouts? Did you even hear of that? Mm-hmm. So that was an interesting journey. And I kind of bring this up because in the whole content creation and best practices, a lot of times you are trying something and you don't know how it's going to work out. Mm-hmm. When we launched Blab, we had no idea, the first TBJA chat. Now this is our second one. We're seeing, a lot of people tuning in, and that's awesome. But Google actually did this thing called Helpouts, and you could jump on with somebody who has expertise, whether it's in brand journalism. I have another brand called the Plant-Based Diet. And so I was actually doing some coaching on that, and then they would take a fee, but it died, I want to say, within a year's time. So I'd like to hear what both of you have to say about testing the waters for things. How long do you try something out? Because a lot of times when I talk to my guests, they'll tell me, you got to stick it out. And then there's other times you don't want to stick it out. You want to know when to say, hey, enough of this.
Yeah, I mean, for us, when we're testing something, it's for ourselves as an agency and individuals, and then for our clients. So we have to be open to experimenting and kind of staying current, but you also have to be aware of what makes you money. So it doesn't really make sense all the time to kind of spread yourself out all over online. It depends on what your business is. For a lot of us as marketers and PR and journalists, we do need to be all over. But the example of Google Plus, my Google Plus page is all set up, plenty of connections on there, not a ton, a good amount. I did it for the SEO, and as I saw it not being relevant to my day-to-day, I just pulled back. Whereas Periscope, I'm just starting to experiment with. Remember last time I didn't even have one. I actually did my first scope on vacation on the beach, looking for dolphins.
Yeah. It's fun, right?
It is fun. It's a great platform to start gaining followers right away. And it's interesting how you can use video kind of like this, but live streaming from everywhere and anywhere, and learning the unique challenges that come with the platform, like not being able to hang on to your videos very long. So there's tools to help with that now. So I would say for us as an agency, it just depends on the potential there is. So if there's potential for us to create a revenue stream from it, or for it to build our thought leadership, and it's really targeted to whatever the target audience is that we're pursuing, we might stick it out for 6 months or a year. But blogging is another one of those examples where you kind of have to look at what are you blogging about? What does your traffic look like? And make time for the numbers, which is another thing. But if you don't look back at your analytics, you don't know if you're just spinning your wheels.
Right. So one of the things we said we were going to talk about here is client challenges. And this obviously, I know we have a variety of different people on the call. For the Brand Journalism Advantage podcast, we have brands themselves, CEOs. We also have people who are journalists transitioning into the brand journalism space. Yes, it's true. Life after TV journalism or print journalism, it does exist. But we want to talk about what are those client challenges like? And Melanie, you had some thoughts on that. So why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that, obviously I studied journalism. I always thought I would be on the newsroom side, and now I'm more on the business side. So I've been through some of that. And I think one of the things that's tough for colleagues I have who have made that transition as well, often later in their careers, whether it's through layoffs or they're going into more of a freelance model and want to bring that for extra revenue. A challenge people run into is that it's almost like having a bunch of different editors who have different opinions. Usually in a newsroom situation, who you have to impress, who has the final, the publish button or the print option. Whereas when you're working in branded content, sometimes you have 3, 4, 6, 10 different stakeholders that all have different interests. You know, some are worried about bringing revenue to the company if you're working with a sales team. Some are worried that, you know, the marketing team wants to do something never been done before. The agency has maybe a different thought than the brand themselves. And very often it seems almost like the brand and the agency that represents them may not even be talking about what they want to do.
Right.
So sometimes, you know, in a newsroom, you might create a piece of content once, twice, maybe 3 times if you have to come at it from a new angle. Sometimes a piece of content that's branded has seen 10, 12, 15 iterations before it ever gets to the web or the page. So it's definitely a different environment, and you kind of have to just acknowledge and be okay with the fact, you know, if you want to stick it out, that, you know, the content may not always be a portfolio piece, and that your motivations for creating content have to be a little varied, and sometimes you have to give a little bit more than you would in a newsroom. And that's not something everyone's comfortable with, but, you know, for those who can sort of master that, you know, and give the quick turnaround and try new angles, it's something that they can definitely use those same skills to translate to branded content.
So one thing that I want to share, I'm a video journalist. So I come into it and I go after, in particular, the clients who are looking for video. And today, you know, there's a lot of people who want to access that and put that into place. But what I've found is, you know, now that everybody has, you know, one of these and a smartphone in their hand, and everybody's a photographer, and everybody thinks they understand the concept of storytelling. And there's really a lot to that. But one of the challenges I've faced is helping people understand, helping the brands really be able to understand the process of where we're going. So why we're creating this story, and then taking it down that path and helping them understand, like Kate, you talked about, what's that call to action? What are you trying to do? And Melanie, you mentioned, you know, maybe the call to action is getting them to the website, but there's no indication of any website anywhere to be found. So along the lines of that whole process, you have to be able to explain it and carry them with you. But this is really, really new. So the social platforms are new. The native advertising isn't so much new, but how it's being communicated. How do you get around this, or how do you best explain this whole process to somebody who's maybe just interested in, is this going to make my phone ring? Am I going to get, you know, more dollars in the door?
It's
from my side.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. So two of the things that I remind people all the time is that, you know, like you said, there is a lot of change happening, and I try to encourage people to think of it as a long game. You know, you're not going to start blogging today and get more leads tomorrow. You know, you're not going to start tweeting today and get more signups tomorrow. It's got to be something that you give time to grow, to experiment, to learn, to gain insights from round 1 and do better in round 2, and then the same thing to round 3, 4, and 5. So giving it some time. And the second thing is to let people know that it's okay for not everything to be a win. I think I mean, the stakes are high. Obviously there's money involved, but you know, not every movie is, you know, a blockbuster. Not every piece that a regular reporter writes is going to be the top story on the page. You know, there's half the tweets we write sometimes don't get any engagements. You know, it doesn't make us quit tweeting. It just makes us think, how can I do better and get people to engage more? So, you know, trying to encourage people to just, you know, give it the long game and be okay with not everything working. Take that as a learning.
And not just because it's not a win in how we thought, you're always getting that data, you know, like what's working and what's not. So it's interesting because you can learn what not to do or what doesn't resonate with your target audience. So I think that's a great point. And then the thing I would say to add to that is trust. You have to be able to partner with someone you trust. And this goes for whether you're on the client side or you're a journalist or you're the brand, you're the agency, you're the marketer. If you don't feel like there's a relationship of trust, it's going to be hard to have a successful content marketing campaign because, like you said, it's long term. It's not a 5K, it's a marathon. So we need to be able to be on the same page and have clear goals. One of the things that I think is really helpful is if you can map out a strategy, and which is what we're all talking about, but map out a strategy and have checkpoints or points in that strategy where you're touching base on results, and not just we finished the native advertisement or we finish the blog post, but this is what it looks like process-wise. If you can communicate more, you're going to instill more trust along the way as we're waiting to measure.
So, Ross, that's a great question, which is for brand journalism, are companies doing it more in-house or with consultants and freelancers? And I'll kick it off. I can tell you that that's exactly what I do is I work in that space as a consultant and a freelancer helping brands do this. But if you look at on my show, The Brand Journalism Advantage, I've had several different large brands on there. So like Coldwell Banker, I can tell you they're doing it. Wells Fargo is doing it in-house. Coca-Cola doing it in-house. Cleveland Clinic. That was an amazing interview. And they have whole teams. Now, those brands are huge brands. So what they do is they actually set up a newsroom, a brand newsroom, and then they operate it just like it might operate either at a television station, a magazine. So I'm thinking of Tomasz Kellner, who I talk about a lot. Love him. He was early episodes of our show, but he's with GE Reports. And he used to be with Forbes, a technology reporter. And then all of a sudden, GE's having a managing editor position. It's kind of funny, right? But that's where we're moving with brands. So on the other side of it, though, are the smaller ones, whether you're, a solopreneur or you, have a smaller company and you want to do something like this, you can begin the process, but obviously you don't have that whole team. One thing I can tell you that I think is really important is having an editor, having somebody, another set of eyes, whether it's friends, like all of us are becoming friends here. If I want to shoot something over, or Kate wants to shoot something over to me, Melanie, it's welcoming to be able to have that, because in today's day and age, all it takes is a quick, click and you've published something. And it can be really great, but it can also be damaging. So that's my perspective on it. How about you two?
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. And I think, interestingly, there's a lot who do it as an overlap, much like a lot of publishers, do they create their content in-house or through freelancers? It's usually a combination of both. You usually have a skilled editor who's there, who knows the brand, who knows the voice, who can sort of vet those requests, who can solicit other submissions that are maybe outside the area of expertise or bring in big names. And I think brands are doing it very similarly. And same thing for in-house content studios at publishers. There are a lot of publishers who have a core team of editors and content strategists and will leverage individual expertise on a certain topic by bringing in freelancers who have that niche. So I think a lot of them are embracing sort of a combo model.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, and you see brands do this with other things like just their marketing or PR or social media. It helps to have a collaborative environment. When you're working with an agency or a consultant that's working with a bunch of brands, or even Time in this case, where you've got a bunch of different people advertising, you're bringing that perspective of all those brands versus Coca-Cola being Coca-Cola. So I think it's interesting to see with those brands. I bet they also have agencies, of course, that they're consulting with in the process. Even though they have a whole team, they can afford to have big agencies helping them with ideas. So it's neat, like you were saying, Phoebe, to create these networks where even if we don't have those big budgets, we have the network so we can share ideas and kind of collaborate together.
To me, when I started out about a year ago with the podcast, literally you go from nothing. I mean, the brand didn't even exist. And at first I thought, this is so hard, even just getting people on the show was difficult. And this is me coming from a TV background, but it was, like the wild, wild west, right? You're just like pitching to people and trying to get them on the show. And as soon as it started taking off, and then there started becoming these collaborative effects. So I guess as part of my goal with content creation, when I work with brands, companies that are interested in getting into this space, is looking at that partnership with somebody else who's in line. But actually, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who said this on my show recently, but they said sometimes even partnering with somebody who is your competition, and opening that up, because we're not all serving, even if you're in competition, we're not all serving the same audiences.
Right.
And what you discover is that in coming together through that synergistic relationship, there's really a lot of good done and a lot of good put out. So this invaluable information, if I were sitting here alone, I could tell you so much in an hour. But by bringing together more people, by having you folks online joining us and making your comments and giving us your props, that inspires us to go look for more people and share more. And that collaboration is, I think, one of the most critical components, of moving forward in this space.
It's interesting too. I'd love to hear on that topic from both of you about what your content repurposing cycle looks like. When you create a piece of content, whether it's your podcast, blog post, what you're doing in your e-newsletter, do you repurpose that at all on social? And then what you guys are doing at Time. But what does that process look like? Is it similar across platform and tactic?
So I think for us at Time, it's tough because we're always doing it on behalf of an advertiser, at least on my team, right, on the native team. So it usually depends on what the advertiser is looking for. I think a lot of our programs are still very single-minded in terms of what their individual goal is. So we probably will just create video. Now, with our partners who are more familiar, we're probably going to do cut downs for social that are cut a little bit differently so that we can then distribute that, through social and bring people in. But for a lot of our partners, they're looking for us to be one part of a solution to a larger program that maybe they're answering some of those other channels with other partnerships. But whenever possible, we try to think about how a piece of content can translate across more than one platform. I think the thing we're doing most often is thinking how a single piece of content or a single topic most often can come to life through different brands that we have. So if someone comes and says, I really want to talk about why my company cares about the environment, well, how do I tell that story on travel and leisure in a different way that I might tell it in Time, in a different way that I might tell it in People? So that's our challenge more often, and it's a good challenge. It's exciting to think about how to bring those stories to life through different angles and for different audiences, and that's luckily something we get to do in-house all the time. So it's definitely a lot of fun.
So one of the things that I think about when I look at where we are in the online world is I take it to the offline world or the TV airwaves, right? And back then we would have to do something like create a story for the 5 o'clock news, another one for the 6:30. And then we might partner with one of the radio stations and I'd be doing a voiceover package for the radio station. And then when we went into, online, the digital world came to be, we were then creating content like that. So what my repurposing looks like is taking the content, and I got to admit, I haven't done the best job at this because, as someone once said, you should treat your own, maybe it was you, Kate.
Yeah.
That talked about
someone who shall remain nameless.
But Kate said this, talking about treating your own business, your own brand, like your favorite client, right? Or your top client. And that's so important because we a lot of times put that secondary. So one of the things that I did in trying to market myself was saying, okay, I'm gonna get my, if you will, my masters through my guests by doing this podcast, getting all this really great information and really pushing the guests to share with me their top secrets and top tips on making their brand successful. But then taking that content, and a guest just recently turned me on to Rev. If you haven't heard of Rev, use them for the first time to transcribe a couple of podcasts. And cool. I was just, it was awesome. So, at 180 episodes, it can get a little pricey, but, doing that all at once. But taking that content and then turning it into SlideShare, Instagram, Pinterest. I'm just trying to think of some of the other spaces that I like to play in, of course, Facebook. But those have been really great for me to repurpose the content. Now, here's something that I find interesting, though. And I heard on another podcast, they were talking about this, too. Sometimes you put out a tweet or you put out, maybe not so surprising, or you put out a link to something and people will share that without ever really, reading what that content was. It's kind of fascinating.
They're excited.
Somebody needs to do a study and put out a tweet. It's about one thing and really the content's about another. But everybody's sharing it. But I bring that up because you get what I'm saying. If you create this following, when I created the podcast, my Twitter went way up. And I tell the story on some of the episodes. I hated Twitter in the beginning. But then I found, through my guests, I found the tools and the tricks of it. And I started learning how to be more relevant. And I started connecting with the audience that really mattered. And so as I started pushing that out, it worked synergistically. They started sharing. It started being a win-win. So it's back to that collaboration, but it's back to also identifying and knowing and defining that audience and knowing who wants to hear this. So it hasn't been, it's not like I skyrocketed to 100,000 or something like that, but I got that core audience. And I think that's worth talking about, the fact that maybe you don't need 50,000. You might only need 5,000 or whatever your number is to connect with those right people. If you are engaging like we're having here in this stream over here, that's to me 1,000 times more important.
And that's something that I found with the newsletter as well. And it's still young, but what I found is that my total number of subscribers is not incredibly impressive. It's a few hundred. But what I will tell you is that my open rate is a little over double the industry average, and my click rate, the rate at which people click the links in there, is 7 times the industry average. And it's because the group is small but mighty, and they're very, very interested in the topic. So if someone's not interested in the content that I can put forth, then I don't necessarily need them to subscribe, because I can't provide a lot of value for them. But if someone is subscribing, then I want to provide enough value to make sure that they're engaged. So that small audience, I don't know that the newsletter would be better per se if there were 5 times as many people engaging 1/5 as.
Right. And that's, again, that vanity metrics that we were talking about. So, I brought that up earlier in the conversation because so often I'd hear clients be like, well, I want to have X amount of people on my Facebook or X amount of likes or that type of thing. And I say, look at your Twitter feed. Are you being retweeted? Are you being favorited? Do people listen to what you're saying, whether or not they actually click the link back? I mean, hopefully you can get them over there, but we are in a space where it's a cluttered digital world. So you've got to stand out. People are asking, what you'd say the best social media outlet is. That's a super, that's just a super tough question, because it really depends on what your product is, what your service is. So for instance, one of my clients is a remodeler. House is huge and off the hook for them, right? And House is only, if you're not familiar with that app, check it out. They're only about 5 years old, and we just celebrated 5 years with them in the San Diego marketplace. But they're a great app because people will, it's almost like pinning. We'll grab their ideas. They'll create, idea books based on it. So it works well. But if you are in the thought leader space, like a lot of us, then maybe Twitter's that playground, or LinkedIn, joining groups. When I started the podcast, I would go into, and I need to get better and spend a little more time in this area, but I would go into the groups and talk to people. What's the other one? Quora? Do you guys ever answer questions there?
No, but I use it for research a lot.
Yeah, and it's great. And if you participate and answer questions, it's really helpful. People will share that, and but of course, there's a good amount of time, right, spent on all of this. Do you guys have any suggestions for the folks online about how you spend your time? Like, do you get up at 3 a.m. and peruse your social media channels? How do you do it?
I mean, for me, I use Twitter pretty regularly. So in the morning, I try to schedule a few things to go out throughout the day. So if I get caught up, it's not totally dead. Sort of evergreen stuff or links that I, want to resurface from recently. And then I just use downtime in between things, waiting in line for coffee, I'll scroll through Twitter and reshare something, or, if you're waiting for your lunch or something like that, on a coffee break. So I wouldn't say I dedicate a ton of proactive, scheduled time. I think if I were promoting a product or working at a brand, I'd probably want to do that. But just for me personally, I try to just connect with people. When I see something and I want to engage, I do that versus trying to overload it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree. It's, well, one, to keep up with Twitter and LinkedIn, I use Buffer a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I'm all about using tools to save time. All the better if they're free. So Buffer is used a lot. We don't really use Hootsuite that much now. Instagram, I post to organically. I've just been enjoying it personally. I've been enjoying taking artistic photos and kind of the journey that is life. And it's interesting to see how that can grow. I think, what is it, 300 million people on Instagram now or something?
Yeah, Instagram's getting really large, but there's still so much opportunity. There's an episode we did with Sue B. Zimmerman, and if you haven't heard her,
she's great.
Is that amazing? And that episode is packed. I'm telling you, you have to go over to thinklikeajournalist.com, type in Sue B. Zimmerman, and we just packed that episode with here's how you do it. And one of the things, Kate, I don't know if you're aware of this, but for the longest time, Instagram, you could only use your phone to post. And you still have to use your phone, but if you use Hootsuite, you can, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty new and it's neat. It brought a lot of people back to Hootsuite.
Oh, it brought me back in a big way. So what you can do, if you don't know what we're talking about, is you can schedule your posts via Hootsuite, and then it'll send you a reminder. Now, here's the thing. If you're not paying close attention to your phone, it's going to remind you here, but it's not going to keep reminding you. So one time I found like all these these back posts, like, oh, I was supposed to have done that 3 days ago to Instagram. So you do have to stay on top of that. But there's another app that I want to leave you guys with, and it's called Bundle Post. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Oh my goodness. You have to check this out, because one of the things about content creation that we haven't really touched on that much for best practices is that I believe content creation is important, but let's face it, if you're very small and you're trying to create content and you're trying to do it regularly and you're doing all these other things, something is going to give, and you're either not going to create content well, and that's a mistake, because your audience will say, I'm out of here. This isn't worth my time. There's so many choices, and we thank you guys for choosing us right now, but we know you could be somewhere else doing something else. Yeah. So it's really important to make it valuable to them. So in that, I divide it this way, and I teach brands in the beginning, I actually teach them to do 80% of curated content. Go around and be that leader, just directing people to get the information and the answers they want. And as they build out either, like I said, I'm a video journalist, as they build out their educational video library, then they can start pushing more of their own content or their blogs or something like that. But in the beginning, if you have 3 blog posts or 3 Instagram photos, it's not as relevant. So curate and share other people's great thoughts and then add your take on it. That's my perspective, if you will.
Yeah, and a great tool for that, unless you know of another one, feel free to chime in, but Feedly, Feedly.com, and see, we're all nodding. You can make content buckets, basically. So all the sites that you normally go out to, you're going to, Facebook and CNN and all these different places, you can aggregate them all together. So you can I have like a paleo food Feedly section, or PR, or people's blogs that I follow. And so you can just see this stream and just preview and read in Feedly. And then you can schedule that content as you're reading it. So it saves so much time, and it gives you a lot of ideas, especially if you're creating social media content for your clients or yourself, and blog post inspiration too, or Periscope. You can apply it wherever. You got to check out Bundle Post. I've got nothing in it other than the fact that I was introduced to it by a guest on the show. See, I learn everything from that. Yeah, it's so fun. Collaboration.
It is so true. But a guest introduced me to it, Katie Jordan. Awesome episode, all about wellness, and I have been using it ever since. I don't know how I lived without it. But what other key things are apps that you use that you can't live without?
Another thing that I do is I actually really love Twitter lists. And like I said, I'm sort of an active Twitter person, but similar to the way that Feedly will aggregate all of the things that.
Here too.
Hello, guys.
Oh, hey, Melanie, hold on.
Sure.
Since it finally worked.
This is our first seat here.
How are you? Is it Nabil?
I'm sorry you can't see me. I'm just in darkness right now, so there's no light here in
Oh,
Australia.
that's okay.
Oh, no worries. You got a question for us?
Yeah, what are you guys talking about? I feel curious.
Oh. Well, you know what? You might have to watch the replay because we're actually getting close to closing down here. But we will definitely let you check out the replay. We're talking all about content marketing.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, though.
Yeah.
We'll catch you on the next one.
And then Melanie, what was that tool you were talking about?
Oh, I was just saying I like using Twitter lists because for the stuff that I'm looking at when you're talking about branded content, there's a lot of folks who cover it a little bit, but not a lot. And so I like to sort of aggregate individuals that I know who are doing branded content into a list and put them alongside, the T Brand Studio account and some of the other accounts so that I have my own custom, Phoebe, as it were. Just the folks that I'm curating myself who aren't necessarily in a predefined category, but are tweeting about the kinds of things I want to be tweeting about. So I found that really useful for me. And I do have one for all the Time Inc. brands that I created so I can keep track of what we're doing here. And then I also have a content marketing crew list that is a bunch of folks in the content marketing space. So both of those, if you're into that, you can go subscribe and, you'll get those in your.
No, that's great. And it's a good way to stay in touch with what people are talking about that you actually know in your network. So like I have one for CEO groups that I'm a part of. So I can just know what's going on in their world. So then if I run into them, I know what's interesting.
So let's talk about private groups on Facebook as we start to wind down the last couple of minutes. Because I know a lot of online marketers use that. They also use LinkedIn groups. And what I found is from one of the other episodes, one of my guests talked about they brought actually together, remember I talked about the competition factor and even collaborating. So this was a brand that was, I want to say something really exciting like the creator of locks, and what they found is they were trying to find out insight. They were trying to do some studies and gain some knowledge, because what I'm finding is when you write a blog post, when you give that new and relevant information that you can't find anywhere else, you're not just repurposing it from somebody else's blog or sharing a study that's already been published, but you actually do the homework through a private group like getting people to respond to your LinkedIn or your Facebook, you actually create the ability to get people in and talking about it. So how have you used, these private groups to do some research or to stimulate conversations? And do you have any top tips on that?
They're great. I mean, it just depends on what you're doing. I haven't used them to find clients or anything, but it's really about networking. So I have some speaker groups I'm a part of, some marketing, PR agency owners. And it's awesome because if you're looking for a team member, you can put the call out there. There's this pitching group I'm a part of, and someone will say, look out, this is someone saying they're from the Wall Street Journal, but it's really spam and they're trying to just connect with your client, which you probably see all the time, Melanie. But yeah, they're great.
Yeah. Well, we are at the top of the hour, and we love the fact that you guys have been sharing this. It's meant a lot to us. We hope it's been as stimulating for you as I think it has been for the three of us. Again, Kate Finley is co-hosting this with me. This is the Brand Journalism Advantage Chats, and Melanie Deziel has been our guest. Melanie is also on tomorrow. She goes live on the Brand Journalism Advantage podcast. So if you're not familiar with that, make sure you head over to thinklikeajournalist.com. You can listen to Melanie's episode live, or not live, but recorded. It'll go live tomorrow. And you can also listen to Kate's episode. She's episode 166. So you can look for hers in the podcast calendar. We talk all about public relations, social media, branding, inspiration, entrepreneurship. We cover all of it from the marketing perspective, the journalistic side, bringing it all together, flushing out all this information so that you can take home tangible tools. My goal, my interest in all of this is helping everybody grow, helping them pull together the right information. I know I can't do it alone. So that's why I started all of this. And I am so grateful that all of you have tuned in. And I'm grateful to Melanie for being our guest today and Kate for co-hosting alongside me. We'll be doing this once a month. If you've got topics that you want to include, tweet us up. You know, our information's right there in the side. Send us something and say, hey, you know, let's talk about this. And then jump in one of the open seats. So thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Have a great
Bye,
day.
guys.
See you next.
Bye, ladies. Chat soon.